The man in the reflection was a stranger. He wore the right suit, a $1,000 cage of tailored wool. He sat in the right chair behind the right desk on the top floor of a glass and steel monument to his own ambition. But his eyes were hollowed-out craters, the dead remnants of a star that had collapsed under its own weight. This was Julian, CEO, visionary, a man who had built an empire from nothing and now, surrounded by everything, felt like nothing himself. The city sprawled beneath him, a glittering testament to human will, but he felt no connection to it. He was a ghost haunting his own life, a king of an empty kingdom. The phone on his desk pulsed with a silent, insistent light, a summons from a world he no longer had the strength to command. The burnout wasn't a fatigue he could sleep off. It was a cancer of the soul. It was the slow, grinding erosion of his will, his passion, his very identity, leaving behind a fine, gray dust. The ashes. He looked at his hands, resting on the cold, polished mahogany. They had once built things, signed deals, shaken the hands of powerful men. Now they felt useless, disconnected. He had won the game. He had climbed the mountain. And here at the summit he found only a barren, windswept peak and the suffocating realization that he had sacrificed the man to build the monument. In that moment of profound, silent despair, a different kind of fire kindled in the ruins. Not the hot, ambitious flame of his youth, but a cold, hard, defiant spark. If this was the end, if this was the sum total of his victory, then he would not go out as a whimper. He would not fade into the gray ash of mediocrity and regret. He would make one last stand, not for the company, not for the shareholders, not for the ghost in the mirror, but for the man he was supposed to be. This would not be a new business strategy. This would be a scorched-earth campaign against the weakness inside him. A brutal 7-day war to reclaim his own mind. This is the story of that last stand. This is the blueprint for the burnt-out CEO's last stand, reclaiming power from the ashes. And it is a blueprint for you, because you don't need to be a CEO to be burnt out. You just need to have built a life that is slowly suffocating the person living it. Today, that ends. Today, we begin the reclamation. Day 1, the audit of ashes. The first act of any real war is to know the terrain of your defeat. Before you can reclaim power, you must brutally confront how you lost it. Julian's last stand began not with a roar, but with a profound and terrifying silence. He switched off his phone, his laptop, his monitors. He told his assistant he was not to be disturbed for any reason, short of the building itself being on fire. And even then, he might let it burn. He swiveled his chair away from the desk, away from the symbols of his hollow victory, and faced the sterile, blank wall. And he sat. The silence at first was a relief. Then it became an antagonist. Into that vacuum flooded the cacophony of his inner world, the anxieties, the regrets, the endless to-do lists, the phantom conversations, the echoes of criticisms from years ago. It was the sound of his own internal chaos, the noise he had been outrunning for a decade with work, with ambition, with noise. He didn't fight it, he let it come. This was the audit. He drew a line down a piece of paper. On one side he wrote, "Things I control," on the other, "Things I do not." This is the foundational law of the Stoic warrior, the dichotomy of control. It is the first and most crucial weapon in mental warfare. Under things I do not control, the list was long and painful. The stock market, the opinions of his board, the actions of his competitors, whether a key employee would quit, whether his children would resent the time he'd lost with them. He realized with sickening clarity that 99% of his mental and emotional energy was being poured into this column. He was a general trying to command the weather, the tides, and the thoughts of the enemy army while his own soldiers starved. Under things I control, the list was shockingly, terrifyingly short. His thoughts, his judgments, his actions and reactions, his will, that was it. That was the entirety of his kingdom. A tiny, besieged citadel in the middle of a raging, chaotic storm, and he had abandoned his post. He had left the gates wide open, allowing the barbarian hordes of external events and other people's opinions to storm in, plunder his peace, and burn his throne. The burnout wasn't from the work. The burnout was from the catastrophic misallocation of his life force, fighting battles he could never win on ground he did not own. He remembered a story he'd read about a legendary samurai who, after a devastating defeat, spent a month living in the ruins of his own castle. He didn't rebuild. He walked the scorched earth. He touched the burnt timbers. He slept under the open sky where his roof used to be. He had to fully inhabit his failure to understand its texture, its smell, its weight. He had to see that the stone foundations, his training, his code, his spirit, were still there beneath the rubble. Only then could he begin to rebuild not the same castle but a stronger fortress. Julian was in his own ruined castle, his ashes. He spent the entire day in that chair, not moving, just watching the thoughts come and go. He didn't judge them, he just audited them. That fear about the quarterly report. It belongs in the other column, let it go. That anger at a rival's comment, their words are not in my control, my reaction is, let it go. The guilt about missing my son's game, the past is not in my control, my presence today and tomorrow is. It was a brutal, exhausting triage. He was cutting away the gangrenous limbs of his psyche. By the end of the day, he wasn't energized. He was scoured. He was empty, but it was a clean, sacred emptiness. The chaos had receded. For the first time in years, he could hear the silence again. He had surveyed the battlefield, and he now knew where the real fight had to take place. Not in the boardroom, but within the square footage of his own skull. Your first step is the same. You must conduct your own ruthless audit. Shut off the noise. Take a single hour. Sit with a piece of paper and draw that line. Be brutally, unflinchingly honest. List everything that causes you stress, anxiety, and fear. And then, one by one, place it in the correct column. You will discover that you have been fighting ghosts. You will realize how much of your inner strength has been hemorrhaging into things you cannot influence. This audit is your declaration of sovereignty. It is you, standing on the ramparts of your inner citadel, and deciding, finally, who and what you will allow through the gates. Day 2, Forging the Blade. Power that is not expressed through action is merely a fantasy. After the audit of ashes, the next step is not to think more, but to do something. The link between the will and the body must be reforged. It has been severed by comfort, by convenience, by the endless analysis of the modern mind. Day 2 for Julian was about forging the blade of discipline. It wasn't about complex life hacks or productivity systems. It was about primal, simple, non-negotiable acts. His alarm went off at 5 a.m. Before he would have hit snooze, his mind already racing with the 100 demands of the day. Today he got up, no hesitation. He walked to the bathroom and turned the shower handle all the way to cold. The shock of the water was a baptism. It wasn't pleasant. It was a violent, physiological override of his comfort-seeking mind. For 2 minutes, he stood under the icy deluge, focusing only on his breath, in, out. It was a conscious act of choosing voluntary hardship over involuntary softness. It screamed to every cell in his body, I am in control here, not my fleeting desire for comfort, me. After the shower, there was no phone. There was a single book on his nightstand, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. He didn't try to read a chapter. He read one paragraph. He read it 3 times, letting the words of the Roman emperor, a man who commanded legions yet struggled with the same inner demons, seep into his bones. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Next, a workout. Not at a fancy gym with trainers, but on the floor of his apartment. Push-ups until his arms trembled. Bodyweight squats until his legs burned. He wasn't training for aesthetics. He was training for grit. Each repetition was a strike of a hammer on hot steel. The pain was the forge. The sweat was the proof that his will could command his body to do difficult things. He was reforging the connection. Will, action, result. Food was simple. Black coffee, eggs, no sugar. He was stripping away the trivial decisions that drain mental energy. He was teaching his body that it would be fueled for performance, not indulged for pleasure. Think of a master swordsmith. To create a legendary blade, he doesn't just tap it lightly. He heats the metal until it glows white-hot, removing all impurities. Then he hammers it, folds it, hammers it again. Thousands upon thousands of deliberate, forceful strikes. Each strike aligns the steel's internal structure, making it harder, sharper, more resilient. Your discipline is that hammer. Each day you choose the cold shower over the warm one, the workout over the snooze button, the book over the mindless scroll. You are striking that hammer against the soft steel of your character. You are burning away the impurities of sloth and indecision. You are forging a will that is sharp, hard, and unbreakable. For Julian, these simple, primal acts were a revelation. He had spent years managing billion-dollar complexities, yet he had forgotten how to manage his own morning. By controlling the first hour of his day with ruthless simplicity, he created a psychological victory that echoed through the remaining hours. He felt a sense of clean, earned power that no stock market gain had ever given him. Your task for day 2 is to do the same. Don't try to change your entire life. Forge the blade of your morning. Pick 3 non-negotiable, difficult things and do them before you do anything else. 1. Voluntary hardship. A cold shower. Holding a plank for an extra 30 seconds. 2. Mindful input. Read 1 page of philosophy. No news, no social media. Feed your mind strength, not chaos. 3. Physical exertion. Move your body. It doesn't have to be long, but it has to be challenging. These are not chores. These are rituals of power. You are not just waking up your body, you are waking up your warrior spirit. You are reminding yourself, with every deliberate act of discipline, that you are the smith, and you are forging the weapon that will win this war. Day 3, the trial of silence. The most formidable enemy you will ever face does not command armies or sit in a rival's boardroom. It lives between your ears. It is your inner critic, the voice of doubt, anxiety, and self-sabotage. It knows all your weaknesses and whispers them to you in your quietest moments. Day 3 of Julian's last stand was dedicated to confronting this enemy. It was the trial of silence. After his disciplined morning ritual, he didn't turn to work. He returned to the silence of that empty room. But this time, his objective was different. It wasn't just to observe the chaos, but to go on the offensive. He sat, closed his eyes, and waited. It didn't take long. The voice began its assault. "You're a fraud, Julian. Everyone is about to find out. You got lucky. You're not a leader, you're an imposter. You failed as a father, as a husband. This whole last stand is a pathetic joke. You'll be back to your old self by next week." In the past, he would have done one of two things: believed the voice and spiraled into anxiety, or desperately tried to distract himself with work to drown it out. Both were acts of surrender. Today, he employed the tactics of mental warfare. First, he externalized the enemy. He gave the voice a name. He called it the heckler. This simple act created a space between him, the conscious observer, the commander, and the voice. The heckler wasn't him. It was a saboteur in his camp. Second, he engaged it with cold, stoic logic. The heckler screamed, "You're a fraud." Julian, the commander, calmly cross-examined the claim. "What evidence do you have for that? I built this company from an idea on a napkin. I have led a team of 500 people. I have navigated 3 recessions. These are facts. Your claim is an opinion, an insult designed to demoralize me. It has no power. Dismissed." The heckler whispered, "You're going to fail at this." The commander replied, "Failure is an outcome, and outcomes are not entirely in my control. My effort, my strategy, my resilience, these are in my control. I will focus on my actions, not your fearful predictions. Your prophecy is irrelevant." Dismissed. He did this for an hour. It was more draining than any board meeting. It was a direct confrontation on the battlefield of his mind. He wasn't trying to destroy the heckler. You can't. That voice is a primal part of the human brain, a faulty survival mechanism. His goal was to strip it of its authority, to demote it from a trusted advisor to what it really was: a panicked, unreliable, and cowardly soldier in the ranks. Consider the training of ancient Spartan warriors. They were taught to endure taunts and insults from their trainers without flinching. An enemy general might scream threats from across the field, but a true warrior doesn't break ranks because of words. He assesses the enemy's position, their numbers, their actions, not their noise. Your inner critic is that screaming general. It has no real power over you unless you grant it. Its only weapon is your belief in its lies. The trial of silence is your training ground. You must learn to sit with that voice and calmly, methodically dismantle its arguments. Don't fight it with emotion. Fight it with logic and indifference. When it says you're not good enough, list the evidence of your past efforts and successes. When it says you will fail, remind it that you only control the effort, not the outcome, and your duty is to the effort. When it brings up past mistakes, acknowledge them as lessons learned, data for a better strategy, and then return your focus to the present moment. Your task for day 3 is to schedule this trial. Find 20 minutes of absolute silence. Sit and listen for the heckler. Give it a name. And when it starts its attack, do not run. Do not believe. Interrogate. Cross-examine. Treat its accusations like a lawyer would treat a hostile witness. Use the simple question: is this thought useful? Is it helping me move towards my objective? If the answer is no, you label it as enemy propaganda and let it go. You will not win this battle in one day. But today, you stop surrendering. Today, you show the saboteur in your mind that there is a new commander at the helm, and its reign of terror is over. Day 4. The art of the imperfect action. The mind of a high achiever, like a CEO, is often a trap. It's a machine built for optimization, for flawless planning, for mitigating every possible risk. This is a strength in business, but in personal transformation, it can be a fatal flaw. It leads to analysis paralysis. The fear of not having the perfect plan to change your life becomes the very reason your life never changes. You wait for the perfect moment, the perfect strategy, the perfect motivation. You wait for a sign from the heavens while you are drowning in a puddle. Day 4 was Julian's rebellion against perfection. He had audited his soul, forged his discipline, and faced his inner demon. Now he had to move, not with a grand, multi-year plan, but with a single, imperfect, forward step. He sat at his desk, but this time he took out a fresh notebook. The goal was not to map out the next 10 years. The goal was to answer one question. If the company, the money, and the reputation were gone tomorrow, what would I build with my own 2 hands that would bring me a sense of meaning? He was terrified. The question was too big. His mind, the heckler's ally, immediately started generating objections. You don't have time for this. What if you pick the wrong thing? It's too late to start over. This is self-indulgent nonsense. He felt the paralysis setting in. The urge to create a complex spreadsheet, to do market research, to schedule think tanks. He recognized this for what it was, a sophisticated form of procrastination, a fear of getting it wrong. Then he remembered the Stoic principle of amor fati, to love one's fate, not just the good parts, but all of it. The mistakes, the wrong turns, the imperfections. They are not bugs in the system. They are features of your unique path. To love your fate means to embrace the messy, unpredictable process of living, rather than waiting for a perfect, sterile blueprint. So he made a new rule for the day: imperfect action only. He set a timer for 25 minutes. He was not allowed to strategize or plan. He was only allowed to write, to move the pen. He started writing about his childhood love for building things with wood. He wrote about the satisfaction of taking a raw material and shaping it into something useful, something beautiful. It was rambling, it was sentimental. It was, from a business perspective, completely useless. But as he wrote, something shifted. A tiny flicker of the old fire, the passion for creation, not for profit, but for the act itself, began to glow. After 25 minutes, the timer went off. He didn't have a business plan. He had 2 messy pages of thoughts, but he had moved. He had broken the spell of paralysis. He had taken an imperfect step in a new direction. This is a profound shift. We are taught to aim for excellence, but this often becomes a cage. The real path to transformation is paved with 1,000 small, clumsy, imperfect actions. It's the out-of-shape person who goes for a 10-minute walk, not the person waiting until they have the perfect gym membership and a celebrity trainer. It's the aspiring writer who writes one bad paragraph, not the one endlessly outlining their masterpiece. Think of a sculptor facing a giant block of marble. He doesn't see the finished statue at first. He can't. His first act is to take a chisel and make a crude, ugly chip in the stone. That first chip is an act of faith. It's an imperfect action that breaks the pristine, intimidating surface of the marble and begins the process of revealing the form within. Without that first ugly chip, the masterpiece remains forever trapped in the stone. Your task for day 4 is to take your chisel and make a chip. Identify one area of your life where you are paralyzed by the need for a perfect plan. Your career, your health, a creative project. Then identify the smallest, messiest, most imperfect action you can take today. Don't plan it, just do it. Send that one awkward email. Go to the gym and do one exercise. Write one sentence. Draw one line. Make the call you've been dreading. The goal is not the outcome of the action. The goal is the action itself. The goal is to prove to yourself that you are a person who moves, who creates, who engages with the world, not a person who sits on the sidelines, endlessly strategizing a game they never play. Embrace the art of the imperfect action, for it is the only art that ever builds anything real. Day 5, the strategic surrender. Power is a paradox. The more desperately you cling to it, the more it slips through your fingers. True power, the kind that can't be taken from you, is often found not in gaining more, but in surrendering what you don't truly need. The 5th day of Julian's last stand was about this strategic surrender. It was the day he began to let go. As a CEO, his identity was fused with control. Control over his schedule, his team, the narrative of his company. He hoarded responsibility, believing that if he wasn't personally overseeing everything, it would all collapse. This wasn't leadership, it was ego, and it was a primary source of his burnout. His throne was a prison he had built for himself. Today, he started to dismantle it. He turned his phone back on. The screen lit up with hundreds of notifications, a torrent of demands, questions, and crises that just days ago would have sent him into a reactive panic. He looked at the first email. A dispute between two department heads. The old Julian would have immediately dived in, mediating, dictating a solution, asserting his authority. The new Julian stared at it and asked a different question. Is my intervention essential to the survival of the kingdom, or is it merely essential to the survival of my ego? He realized it was the latter. He forwarded the email to his two most senior VPs with a simple message. Solve this together. I trust your judgment. He felt a pang of fear, a withdrawal symptom from the drug of control, but it was followed by a wave of lightness. He had not abdicated his responsibility, he had empowered his leaders. He had surrendered a task to reclaim his focus. He went through his calendar for the next month, a suffocating tapestry of meetings and obligations. He began to slaughter them. The status update meetings, the check-ins, the committees where his presence was more ceremonial than necessary. He declined or delegated over half of them. With each click, he was surrendering a false sense of importance and reclaiming his most valuable asset, his time and attention. This is the Stoic practice of negative visualization in action, but with a twist. The Stoics would imagine losing everything, their job, their wealth, their reputation, to realize they could survive, that their inner self would remain. Julian was proactively surrendering the trappings of his power to protect the core of it. He was choosing to lose the battles of the ego to win the war for his soul. Think of a great general besieged in a massive fortress. The fortress is too large, his forces spread too thin, defending every inch of the wall. The wise general doesn't try to hold everything. He makes a strategic withdrawal. He surrenders the outer courtyards, the non-essential buildings, and pulls all of his strength into the central, impregnable keep. He appears weaker. His territory has shrunk, but his actual power, his ability to fight and win where it matters, has become immensely concentrated and more effective. Your life is that fortress. You are trying to defend too much territory. You are defending your need to be right in every argument. You are defending your image on social media. You are defending your control over projects that others could handle. You are spreading your life force thin, and the enemy of mediocrity is overrunning your walls. Your task for day 5 is to conduct your own strategic surrender. Look at your life, your commitments, your habits. What are you clinging to out of ego, fear, or habit that is not truly essential? It could be a responsibility at work you need to delegate. It could be an argument with a family member that you need to let go of. It could be the need to have the last word. It could be a subscription, a committee, a social obligation that drains you. Surrender it. Let it go. This is not weakness. It is the highest form of strategy. Every non-essential thing you release frees up energy. It concentrates your power. You stop being the frantic defender of a sprawling, chaotic territory and become the calm, focused master of an unbreakable inner keep. Surrender the trivial to reclaim the vital. Day 6. The architect of energy. You are a closed system. You are born with a finite amount of time and a daily allocation of energy. The grand project of your life is determined by how you invest that energy. A life of power and meaning is the result of being a ruthless, masterful architect of your own energy. A life of burnout and mediocrity is the result of letting your energy be stolen, wasted, and squandered by 1,000 psychic vampires. Day 6 for Julian was about becoming that architect. He had cleared the internal space, disciplined his will, and surrendered false control. Now he had to redesign his life around the flow of power. He started the day not with a to-do list, but with an energy audit. He took a new page and drew 2 columns. What creates energy? And what drains energy? Under drains energy, the list was grimly familiar. Pointless meetings, arguing with naysayers, mindlessly scrolling through news feeds filled with outrage, worrying about things outside his control, saying yes to things he knew he should say no to. He realized his days were structured around these drains. He was living in a house with massive holes in the walls, wondering why it was always so cold and why his heating bill was so high. Under creates energy, the list was surprisingly simple. The feeling after a hard workout, the clarity after 20 minutes of silence, deep, focused work on a single, meaningful task, a genuine conversation with his wife, reading a book that challenged him, playing on the floor with his son. These were the things that refilled his well, yet they were consistently pushed to the margins of his life, treated as luxuries to be enjoyed only if there was time left over, which there never was. This was the moment of spiritual warfare. The battle is for your life force. Every choice you make either fortifies your spirit or weakens it. He became a ruthless architect. He looked at his newly cleansed calendar and began to schedule the energy creators first. The non-negotiable block for a workout, the 20 minutes of silence, the 90-minute block for deep work with no interruptions, the hard stop at 6 p.m. to be home for dinner. The drains had to fit in around these pillars, not the other way around. He also adopted the ultimate tool for energy preservation, memento mori. Remember, you will die. He took a small, plain coin from his desk and put it in his pocket. It was his reminder. Every time he felt his energy being pulled towards something trivial, an online argument, a petty corporate squabble, he would touch the coin. It was a stark question. With the limited time I have on this earth, is this what I want to trade a piece of my life for? The answer was almost always a resounding no. Memento mori is not morbid. It is the ultimate clarifying agent. It burns away the fog of the insignificant. It forces you to see that your energy is not just a resource. It is the currency of your life. You are spending it every second. The only question is whether you are getting a worthy return on your investment. Imagine your life force is a river. For years, you have allowed hundreds of unauthorized ditches to be dug, diverting your river to irrigate other people's barren fields of drama, anxiety, and triviality. Your own land is parched and cracked. Becoming an architect of energy means closing those ditches. It means building a dam, concentrating your power, and then deliberately choosing to irrigate only that which is fertile, meaningful, and yours. Your task for day 6 is to become this architect. Perform your own energy audit. Be honest. Where is your river flowing? Then, redesign your day. Schedule one energy-creating activity and make it non-negotiable. And identify one major energy drain, a person, a habit, a recurring thought pattern, and build a wall against it. Say no, unfollow, mute, create a rule, and find your own version of the memento mori coin, a pebble in your pocket, a note on your mirror, an alarm on your phone. Use it to interrogate your choices. Is this worth a piece of my life? This is not about time management. It's about life force management. When you control your energy, you control your world. Day 7, the coronation. A last stand is not about survival, it's about victory. The final day of the challenge is not about recovery, it's about coronation. It's the moment the warrior, forged in the crucible of his own trials, reclaims his throne. But the throne is not what he thought it was. It is not a chair in an office. It is the seat of power within his own mind. On the 7th day, Julian walked back into his life. He wore the same suit, walked through the same doors, but he was not the same man. The people he passed in the hallways saw a CEO who looked calmer, more grounded. What they couldn't see was the profound internal shift. He was no longer a ghost haunting his success. He was a king who had returned to his kingdom. His first meeting was with the board. In the past, he would have entered with a knot of anxiety in his stomach, armed with defensive slides and prepared for a fight. Today, he entered with a quiet confidence. He didn't present a litany of data points. He laid out a simple, powerful vision. He spoke about the strategic surrenders he had made, the projects he was killing, the responsibilities he had delegated. He spoke about his new focus on a few vital priorities. He spoke with the quiet authority of a man who had faced his own ruin and was no longer afraid of it. A board member known for his aggressive questioning challenged him. "Julian, this seems reductive. We're worried you're losing your edge." The old Julian would have become defensive, launching into a detailed justification. The new Julian looked him in the eye, paused, and said, "My edge was never in doing more. It was in seeing clearly. I have been sharpening my vision, not my spreadsheet. The fat has been trimmed. We are now stronger, not bigger." There was no argument. The statement came from a place of such deep internal conviction that it left no room for debate. He had reclaimed the throne of his own mind, and from that throne his words had a new weight, a new power. His true coronation happened later that day. He left the office at 5:30 p.m. No last-minute emails, no one more thing. He walked in the door at home, and his son ran up to him. In the past, Julian would have been physically present but mentally still at the office, his mind churning over problems. He would have given his son a distracted hug while thinking about a conference call. Today he knelt down. He put his phone away. He looked his son in the eyes, and for the next hour he was nothing but a father. They built a castle out of blocks on the living room floor. In the middle of their game, Julian looked at the imperfect, teetering structure they had built, and he smiled. This was the real empire. This was the throne that mattered. He hadn't just reclaimed his power as a CEO. He had reclaimed his power as a man. The journey from the ashes is not about getting back to who you were. It's about burning away who you were not, to reveal who you have always been. It's about realizing the ultimate power is not controlling the world, but controlling the mind that experiences the world. The king who rules his own inner kingdom can never be dethroned. This 7-day stand was not a miracle cure. It was the beginning of a new way of life. The battle against the inner critic, the temptation of comfort, the lure of false control, this is a daily war. But now you have the weapons, you have the blueprint. You have seen the path from the ashes to the throne. The story of the burnt-out CEO is your story. His ashes are your regrets, your burnout, your quiet desperation. His last stand is the choice that sits before you right now. You can continue to let your life be a series of reactions to external demands, a slow erosion of your spirit until nothing is left but dust. Or you can make your stand. You can declare war on your own weakness. You can begin your own day one today. Conduct the audit. Forge the blade of your discipline. Confront your inner heckler. Take imperfect action. Make the strategic surrender. Become the architect of your energy. And claim the only throne that can ever truly be yours, the throne of a mind that is clear, a will that is unbreakable, and a spirit that is free. The fire has burned everything down to the foundation. Look closely. The foundation is strong. Now begin to build.